Thank you all for coming. This is something that was sparked by a student. Where is he? Froggy. Should be up here somewhere. Woo! If it wasn't for Froggy, one of my amazing students in one of my sections, one of the many amazing students that I have. And we really wanted to extend the conversation that we've been having in our Big Ideas course that's being taught by professors like Jonathan Simon, Joe Stoner, and Victoria Robinson. So we just wanted to offer these dances to all of you as a prayer and an opening for those who are going to share with us their most, I guess, deepest part of themselves, which is their experiences in prison, or if they're allies, how have they been affected by the prison industrial complex. This is our offering for all of you.
What is the prison industrial complex? Does anyone know what the prison industrial complex is?
Ready? My name is Martin Vela. I'm from San Diego, California. I'm a formerly incarcerated student, and the reason I got involved with the group was because I wanted to do outreach.
Hi, my name is Danny Murillo. I'm a formerly incarcerated student from Norwalk, California. I got involved with the Underground Scholars Initiative before it was even that, and through talking to my professor and a graduate student.
My name is Wendy Pacheco. I'm from East LA. I also came into the project similar like Danny. I'm not formerly incarcerated, but I'm the daughter of an incarcerated parent, and so that has been my entry point, as well as being an AACC senator and trying to leverage resources from the university into the project.
I'm Steven, formerly incarcerated as well, and I got hooked up with these guys through Danny. He invited me to a class, just an informal reading group. That was my initiation into radical abolitionist politics.
What's up, Froggy? I think the Underground Scholars Initiative is important to highlight a topic in our community that's never really talked about, and I feel like it's a lot of times used as a scapegoat in public policy, and especially in California prison system. So I feel like to empower that community and empower that voice is something like us, that as formerly incarcerated students and advocates of formerly incarcerated family members and loved ones, we want to try to do more of.
I think so much of the prison industrial complex and where we are in terms of mass incarceration depends upon fear. It's fear of violence, it's fear of certain kinds of insecurities, but we do indeed have a lot to fear, but we need to flip what we think we're fearing. I think we should fear that we're not paying attention to building a kind of set of social relations and commitments from state and federal government to building communities that we want to live in. And it's untenable, you know, this idea of using fear as a technology to divide us so that issues only belong to one person or the other, that would dehumanize some to say others are human. It's just an untenable situation that can't last for too long. So I think we all need to pay attention to where we are right now and hold a set of accountabilities to each other. Stop being fearful of asking the right questions.
Prior to going in, and even going into prison earlier in my life, I always thought that they existed for a reason, right? Because, you know, I did engage in things that you know, that I don't look, you know, that I wish I could take back, right? Because I know it hurt a lot of people. So, and then when I went to prison, like, okay, cool, yeah, this is where they send me, right? But it's once you're there, and then once you're, you know, in solitary confinement, and then you start looking around, like, yo, why am I in a section where 7 Mexicans and 1 white guy, and we're all of us, right? We're all labeled as associates to an alleged prison gang. Because why? Because I had a Mexican flag, because I had a dictionary of Aztec language, because I had a book about Emiliano Zapata. what are you telling me, that my culture is a crime? So, and then understanding that in there, like I knew what the, you know, so that's like where my idea like of anti-shoe or anti-prison kind of comes about, right?
So what's important is that critical resistance breaks down the concept of prison industrial complex into teaching tools, one of which is a series of concentric circles, which allows us to understand the overlapping and interrelated nature of a set of factors. Imagine the center of the concentric circles, and at the center of the concentric circles are a set of interests. So the prison industrial complex is a set of interests such as guards unions, construction companies, law enforcement, victim rights groups, etc. The next level of the prison industrial complex circles is that these interests are empowered by a set of forces such as racism and xenophobia, systems of oppression, right? So you have to ask yourself in this second set of concentric circles, what systems of power create and support policing, imprisonment, and surveillance, right? So what kinds of expectations do we have of others to perform in certain ways? Who is the criminal? Outside of those forces is that prison industrial complex is a set of interests that uses these tools as a response to these problems. So the tools that it uses are, you know, how does the prison industrial complex keep itself going? Well, it needs prisons, it needs jails, it needs surveillance units, it needs the media, it needs think tanks. These are all tools that it uses to keep itself going. What is it responding to? This is the next concentric circle. It's responding to very complex social questions like homelessness, joblessness, drug use, victim abuse, violence, abuse, police dissent, mental illness. So it has a set of interests. It's using a set of tools that's responding to a set of issues. Who does it affect? Who's the target of this? This is the next set of concentric circles. It's targeting young people, it's targeting homeless people, it's targeting poor people, political descendants, people of color, and immigrants. And the last layer of the concentric circles, it produces these kinds of results. And that means what happens when we rely on imprisonment, policing, surveillance, and solutions to massive social, political, and economic questions is that we remove resources from education, we break families up. We create fear and hatred and disenfranchisement. We create more inequality, not less inequality. We create unsafe communities, not safer communities. That we rely on the state and its apparatus to do the job of the public. And so the prison industrial complex is this. It's interests, forces, tools, responding to problems, affecting certain people and producing certain results. It's a complex system.
Government is one of the most important ways in which we sort of sustain that idea of human dignity. And that's why I think prisons are so important, because there's no part of our government that has a more profound impact on human dignity than incarceration. When we take people and we essentially deprive them of their liberty and their allies and their family, and we make them completely dependent on our government, we're really placing all of our sort of moral capital as a community that respects human dignity, you know, at stake in the way we treat those people. And so when we end up in conditions that really result in torture, in great suffering, and all too often in actual death, I think it really places a moral burden on our state that I don't think I had fully appreciated until I, you know, really started looking at what was happening in our prisons.
Harm needs to be something that we learn from. Like in indigenous communities, when there was a harm, it was actually looked at as a good thing, because that was an entry point for us to learn, for us to come together and then and to learn together. And when people are engaged, you know, when the elders say like, hey, this harm happened, and like, this is the way, you know, not you should, but this is the way that, like, you know, it affects me, and this is the way it affects, and everybody takes accountability and responsibility, then it creates a new narrative. And I feel like we need to make steps to make that happen. And like, I feel like that's bigger than a question of like 40,000 people need to be released, Jerry Brown needs to do this, we need to stop spending money on prisons. Obviously all those things need to happen, but it needs to be a change in worldview, and I feel like that's the biggest part of it.
I think in general, this idea of prisons is safety, right, for the public. It's a place where bad people go, and I had a lot of trouble dealing with that because as someone who's not formally incarcerated but has a parent who's incarcerated, when my father was taken away, I had to deal with that. Who is my father? Is he a bad person? And how do I deal with looking at someone who's taken care of me for so long as someone negative, because I know that that's not what it is. But that's what society, that's what this idea of prison is telling me. And so in having these conversations, it's really difficult because people look to it like, get rid of prisons, prison abolition, what are you talking about? Where are the murderers gonna go? Where are the rapists gonna go? Without acknowledging that this is disproportionately affecting people who are not murderers and not, you know, rapists or whatever. And so it makes the conversation difficult. But in creating a network like this and being able to talk about it with people that you trust and are safe makes it, for me, more comfortable to speak like against it in public.
A lot of folks have never met anybody that has been in prison. They've never visited a prison, and so it's this, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You don't really think about it. You just, it's a wall. That's the way it should be. You know, those folks did something. They deserve to be there, but you take away, you know, the humanity.
There are a lot of people inside who, by being in prison, you would make a really misinformed judgment about the quality of their hearts or their minds or their intellects, and that's just been a good reminder that just because somebody's in prison doesn't mean that they're an idiot or a cold-hearted person, because there's a lot of people in here who are neither.
Hi, I'm Bianca. I'm one of the facilitators for the Teach in Prison decal at Cal. I decided to become a Teach in Prison facilitator and join the class because my family is all in criminal justice. My dad used to be a former SWAT team captain for narcotics, and so I grew up really just knowing that bad people do bad things and bad people go to prison, and that's who's in our prison system right now. And so as I got older, I kind of learned everything that my parents said wasn't exactly true. So I decided to take this course and kind of get a little sense of my own truth, and I realized that it's not the case, that a lot of people in today's prison system are not bad people. I've learned a lot about the prison industrial complex, and I've just realized how much privilege has taken over the prison system. Being a facilitator has been really even more eye-opening. I realized how many people don't know about the issue, how many people do know about the issue, and how many people have actually lived through the issue that are here at Cal and have such amazing stories to tell. And so I really love bringing all these different backgrounds to one place to kind of talk about this really important topic.
One thing I think that people have seen in this course is that people have a tremendous resilience to overcome that, and they change. You know, they change when they get out of prison. They can often restore their lives if they're given that opportunity. And so I'm hoping that it's that human factor, and often in the form of meeting a person face to face who's actually been through the carceral experience, that will stay with our students after the particular readings or maybe the details of our lectures have faded a bit.
Don't think kids should lose close friends at such an early age. Early rage got the best of me. Nobody next to me talking about how to stop the many people from dying. Surrounded by young grown men, but no one grown enough to start crying. Don't mean goodbye. We're gonna cry. So I'm gonna try. One more time. Don't mean it's goodbye, but we all need to try. So I'm gonna try. Turn pain and strength.
Loud and clear the need to feel and be accountable to multi-generational confrontations, to the logic of the politics of carcerality. Quickly shape for yourself your own arc and understanding of carcerality. Make sure that you have some connection, some intimacy to the idea of detention, control, exclusion, surveillance, removal, incapacitation, silence. Now I would add to that list Dylan's note of evisceration.
There's too many of you crying. Brother, brother, brother.
For the first time maybe in my career, I feel like I'm much more the student in the class than I am the teacher. I'm learning from my colleagues for sure, who have brought in, you know, their own great scholarship. But just as much I'm learning from my students, and the number of them that have had their own, profound experiences with our carceral geography, whether incarcerated by having parents incarcerated or brothers and sisters incarcerated, by being heavily policed or criminalized in their community before coming to Cal. Maybe for the first time in my career as a teacher, I feel like I'm sort of in front of the podium only as a collaborator, only temporarily, and only with the sort of tolerance and forbearance of my students who understand the limits of my knowledge and hopefully and frequently remind me of them.
I think it would be hard for a student walking out of the prison class to say that's not my problem. And maybe that's its greatest success, is maybe it might not be today or tomorrow or how you vote or how you raise your children, but I think that there's a haunting feature to having let the cat out of the box because once those knowledges are out, they're hard to put back.
There have been points that have been kind of triggering for me, to be honest, where like I was uncomfortable with stuff. I've been having dreams about being locked up again, and it's been a long time since I had those kind of dreams and those kind of feelings, and like the more we talk about it and get in these spaces and I start to I'm reliving stuff, so some of it has been a little bit uncomfortable, but it's also very empowering that people want to learn about what creates prisons and what the social forces, I feel like is a good thing.
So the momentum around undergraduates here at Cal who've been formerly incarcerated, and I think the need, the thirst to satiate that idea of what is mass incarceration in our lives and what has incarceration and carcerality been through 500 years of American history, that is one evident expression of the need to grapple with massive social questions that we see dividing communities, that aren't making us safer, that aren't making us stronger, that we are grappling with this in its immediate form because it's so evident within our own populations that we have to do something.
So before figuring out all of the things that we're able to offer, I think on the fundamental level, what we were looking at was beyond the folks that are already here, how do we have folks who are currently incarcerated connect to us? And how do we funnel folks into the educational system, right? And so we said, all we need is a space, a phone line, and a PO box where people can write to us and call to us. So at first, first organizing, that's all we wanted. And I think that in itself is having a space where people can come and relax and chill and create a safe network where folks who have a unique experience like you can just talk to you and you can feel comfortable. We wanted folks to be able to just call or write to us and say, hey, I have this question, and us to be able to help, because that in itself doesn't exist.
But coming here, the Underground Scholars program, and just starting that up was just a space with folks that I could relate with. It was somewhere where I could be myself and actually acknowledge that yes, I do deserve to be here, and it doesn't matter what happened in my past. It's what I'm doing now that's counting.
A very difficult and arduous journey, but here we are, and we have space. Isn't this great?
Yeah, this is the raw space that we have been granted for the purposes of the Underground Scholars Initiative. It's humble. It's a humble space, but we know from the people who started Project Rebound that they began in a closet, and so we feel like we're actually really fortunate to have a space of this size that has a window.
Humble beginnings.
And we're very much looking forward to painting and getting some furniture in here and making it our own.
Yes, I look forward to just the opportunity to build something like this here, starting from the ground floor on the UC Berkeley campus.
Yep.
And providing a space for people who have operated in silos, have been marginalized, ostracized, isolated, and literally underrepresented, underserved, and unknown. And as we come together and acknowledge our existence here, we want to reach out to more students like us and provide advantage and opportunity.
So that's the difficult part, because we are already situated in academia, and the place that we're coming from is from the university. So the part of the goal is, how do we balance that? How do we leverage the resources from the university? How do we get them to give us money so that we can start it, because that's how we started, but also not lose ourselves in the institution and let them own what we've created and keep our autonomy to be able to be folks who connect to those that are in the community, because those are our experiences. Because the university oftentimes, they'll co-opt our stories and take it and say, look what we've created, when honestly it was from the ground up, and it was people who had this experience and care about it that said, we need this and we're going to work to get it.
He died. He died seeking a cause, seeking the cause, while the cause was dying seeking him. He died yesterday, he's dying today, he's dead tomorrow, died seeking a cause, died seeking the cause, and the cause was in front of him, and the cause was in his skin, and the cause was in his speech, and the cause was in his blood, but he died seeking a cause. He died, deaf, dumb, and blind. He died and never found his cause, because, you see, he never knew that he was the cause. Good night, my love. Well, it's time to go. Give it up for Miguel Piñero.
I guess what my sense is right now is that we're at the very beginnings of starting to think about what it would look like to dismantle the system as it exists today, and we're at the very, very beginning of thinking about what kinds of alternatives we can be creating that hold people accountable and take seriously the kinds of violence that occurs in our communities, but that also doesn't create more harm than good, doesn't kind of perpetuate systemic violence and further alienate people who are already vulnerable.
Prefigured abolition is a building of community and community accountability, of imagining relationships that aren't harmful, that are based on a sense of security, reciprocity and trust. It takes time, because also you've got to name community. And we may not all have community or think we're members of community. So you have to do some of that kind of real solid thinking about who I am, where I am. Prefigured abolition depends upon the idea of self-determination, of community accountability, of relationships that are healthy. And all of that is hard work and hard to find time for when we live in the ways in which we do right now, which is kind of a market-based sensibility of what are you worth for me in my life, rather than what are we worth together in these lives that we're leading. It sounds, it sounds like an ideal utopia to reach, but I think we've all remembered healthy relationships, and we all remember how we want to get somebody out of our lives who we think is unhealthy or too much trouble, can't deal with them. We quickly set them aside, and it almost feels like human nature to not deal with those difficult relationships. But we're obviously taking steps on this campus, I think, to build a sense of accountability.
This is a moment that comes around maybe once every 2-3 times a century, where a generation sort of has its eye on a deep evil that its community has sort of done. It's willing to take ownership of that evil and try to overcome it. And I want to applaud you and encourage you to take the long view that this is going to be something that might take say the first halves of your lives to really to work through and to have the endurance to do that.
Lastly, I just wanted to say that what I've gotten the most out of all of this is it's not just like a physical space, but like a family, I guess. And I think for me, as someone who is not formerly incarcerated, but again, like have the parent piece, that's been really important. And like the people that I'm sitting next to mean a lot to me, and I've been able to grow so much because of the informal conversations that I've had with them about the work that's going on, about their experiences. And I would hope that that is something that we all take away, and that I hope we'll be able to foster for people who are coming in.
Pick it loud and pick it sound. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see what's going on.